If you are in your 30s right now and you are not doing these specific things, you will still be working a job you hate when you're 55. I know that sounds harsh, but I would rather tell you the truth today than have you wake up a decade from now wondering where all your prime years went. Because here's the thing nobody tells you when you are in your 30s. You are sitting on the single most powerful financial window of your entire life, and most people spend it upgrading their lifestyle instead of building their freedom. Today I am going to show you exactly what it takes to retire in your 40s, not your 60s, not your 65, but your 40s. And yes, it is absolutely still possible in 2026, even with inflation, even with housing costs, even with everything feeling more expensive than it has ever been. Stay with me, because I am going to break this down into stages that actually make sense for where you are right now. Now, let me start with the mindset shift that changes everything, because without this, none of the strategies matter. Most people in their 30s are playing a game called Keep Up. They get a raise, they buy a nicer car, they get a promotion, they move into a bigger apartment, the money comes in, and the lifestyle expands right along with it. This is what financial experts call lifestyle creep, and it is quietly destroying your chances of ever retiring early. The people who retire in their 40s are not necessarily earning more than everyone else. What makes them different is that they figured out early that the gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only number that actually matters. That gap is your freedom. Every dollar that passes through your hands and stays in your possession instead of going to someone else is a dollar, working toward the day you never have to clock in again. Now here's the actual math, and I want you to pay close attention because this is the part most retirement videos skip over. There is a framework called the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, and at its core is something called the 4% rule. The idea is this: if you can save up roughly 25 times your annual expenses, you can withdraw 4% of that number every year, and your portfolio should sustain itself indefinitely based on historical market performance. So let us say you currently spend about $60,000 a year. That means you need roughly $1.5 million invested to retire. Now, I know that number might feel massive, but let me show you why your 30s are the exact right time to be thinking about this. If you are 32 years old today and you invest aggressively for the next 10 years, the compound growth working in your favor is extraordinary. Time is not just a factor here, it is the entire engine. Someone who invests $2,000 a month starting at 32 and earns an average annual return of 8%, which is conservative by historical stock market standards, will have accumulated around $3.5 million by age 52. That is not magic. That is just compound interest doing exactly what it always does when you give it enough runway. The problem is that most people in their 30s are not investing $2,000 a month because their lifestyle has grown to match or exceed their income. So let us talk about the two levers you have: increasing income and reducing expenses. And I want to challenge a really common belief here. A lot of people focus exclusively on cutting expenses and living frugally. And while that matters, cutting expenses alone has a ceiling. You can only cut so much before you are miserable, and your quality of life suffers to the point where it is not sustainable. The real power move in your 30s is to aggressively grow your income while keeping your lifestyle relatively flat. Your 30s are typically when your earning power starts to accelerate. You have enough experience to command higher salaries, you can negotiate, you can pivot into higher paying fields, you can start a side business, you can build income streams that your 22-year-old self simply did not have the skills or credibility to create. Every additional dollar you earn in your 30s that you resist the urge to spend immediately is a dollar that can be working toward your early retirement number. Now let me give you the actual vehicle for where this money needs to go, because stuffing it in a savings account earning 2% is not going to get you to retirement in your 40s. The broad stock market index funds are the backbone of early retirement portfolios for a reason. They are diversified, they are low cost, and historically they have returned around 7 to 10% annually over long periods of time. You want to be maxing out your tax-advantaged accounts first, things like your 401k up to the employer match at minimum, and if your employer offers it, try to hit the full contribution limit. You also want a Roth IRA if your income allows it, because the tax-free growth over 10 to 15 years is genuinely powerful. And here's something a lot of early retirement planners get wrong. They pile everything into retirement accounts that you cannot touch without penalties until you are 59 and a half. If you want to retire at 45, you need taxable brokerage accounts too, because that is money you can actually access before the traditional retirement age. Let me pause here and address the elephant in the room because I know what some of you are thinking. What about a mortgage, kids, student loans, all of the actual adult responsibilities that come with being in your 30s? These are real, and I'm not going to pretend they are not. But here's the reframe. None of these things automatically disqualify you from early retirement. What they do is change your number and potentially shift your timeline by a few years. If you have kids and a mortgage, your annual expenses are higher, which means that you need a larger portfolio to retire on. But the fundamental approach does not change. You still need to grow that gap between income and spending. You still need to invest consistently. You still need to resist the pull of lifestyle inflation. The families who retire in their 40s exist. They are real people. They made intentional choices about housing costs, about how they spend on their kids, about the cars they drive, and about where they put their money every single month. Here's another piece that is almost never talked about in these videos. Retirement in your 40s does not have to mean never working again. For a lot of people in the FIRE community, what it actually means is reaching the point where work becomes optional. You might do some consulting, you might run a small business you actually enjoy, you might write a book or start a YouTube channel about something you are passionate about. The difference is you are doing it because you want to, not because you need the paycheck to survive. That psychological shift from needing the income to choosing the work changes everything about how you show up in your life. And frankly, a lot of people who hit early financial independence end up being more productive and more creative than they ever were during their traditional working years because they are no longer operating from a place of financial fear. Now, let me give you the practical 10-year roadmap that could genuinely get you from your early 30s to financial independence in your early 40s. In the first 3 years, your primary focus should be two things. Building a solid emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account, and then eliminating any high-interest debt. Credit card debt is the enemy of early retirement. The interest rate on that debt is almost certainly higher than your investment returns, so paying it off is the best guaranteed return available to you. Once the high-interest debt is gone, and you have your emergency cushion, every available dollar starts flowing into investments. From year 3 through year 7, this is your accumulation sprint. This is where you need to be as aggressive as you possibly can about building income and keeping expenses disciplined. If you have not negotiated your salary in the last 12 months, you need to do that. If you have a skill that could be monetized outside of your primary job, this is the window to develop that. Think of this phase as the one where you are loading the spring. Every dollar invested compounds the future. Every unnecessary upgrade to your lifestyle delays the finish line. Years 7 through 10 are where something remarkable starts to happen. Your portfolio starts to grow not just from your contributions, but from returns on the money that is already in there. This is the moment when compounding goes from being a theory to being something you can actually see happening in your account statements. At this stage, your focus shifts toward optimizing your tax situation, understanding your actual retirement number with precision, and beginning to think about the practical transition out of full-time work. The truth is, retiring in your 40s is not about being lucky. It is not about being born rich. It is not even about earning an extraordinary salary. It is about making a series of deliberate decisions consistently over about a decade and refusing to let the noise of consumer culture convince you that a newer car or a bigger house is more valuable than your own freedom. The people who do this successfully all have one thing in common. They decided early that their future self deserved more than their current impulses. You are in your 30s. You still have time to be one of those people. The question is whether you are going to act like it starting today. If this video connected with you, subscribe right now because I post content specifically designed to help you build financial independence faster, and the next video in this series covers the exact investment accounts you need set up before you turn 40. You do not want to miss that one.